Hello. There we go. All right. Uh, all right. Look at this packed house Saturday Mumbai Tech week, and here we are to talk about our favorite topic: building foundation models from India. Maybe we'll start with quick introductions. My name is Akrit Vesh. I was founder of a company called Haptic, and now I spend most of my time with the India AI mission, advising them on our national AI strategy.
Hi, Pratyush, founder of Sarvam AI, building foundation models out of India. Before that was a researcher and faculty member at IIT Madras.
Good afternoon, folks. I'm Mukesh Bansal. Been around startups for last 25 years. Mintra, CureFit, currently building something called Nurix.
Great. So maybe let's just start a little bit. Pratyush, tell us what you're up to with Sarvam.
Yeah, of course, all of you here know about GenAI. By the way, great vibe in the room, great event, great to see very deep conversations with various folks here. Of course, everybody knows LLMs. Um, they are so important to technology that you should have a team capable of building them from scratch here in India, and that's the mission we are on. It is, of course, a focus on Indian languages. It's a focus on what India will do with Gen AI, and we are building the entire stack right from the infrastructure to the models to efficiently serving them and building applications on top of it.
Great. Mukesh, I think, we spoke a few weeks back. I know Pratyush and you have been chatting. I think the audience is wondering what is Mukesh Bansal doing in a Foundation AI panel. So I think we're all waiting to hear, and I think people would love to hear some of the work you've been doing with Meraki and Nurix and others.
Yeah, I think everybody in the room will agree that AI is probably the most profound technological shift of our times. What I've been spending my time and what we are trying to build with Nurix is really thinking through the agentic aspects of AI. We know that the nature of the work in all companies in future will change, and the modality for that change will be this agentic AI that I think increasingly people are talking about. At Nurix, what we are trying to do is build a platform which makes enterprise-grade agent development very easy. And there are a variety of use cases. If you look at large enterprise, there are a lot of processes where leveraging agents can dramatically improve productivity, improve reliability, improve end user customer experience. And I think most of the, at least enterprise side of AI conversation will revolve around agents.
So Mukesh, doubling down on that a little bit, we all know you as this amazing entrepreneur. You've built at least two phenomenal companies between Mintra and CureFit. Tell us a little bit of the journey of how, I mean, obviously we all understand AI is, going to be the most fundamental shift, but how over the last few years you got into this space, the business, and found this problem?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest thing for all entrepreneurs is to find the right macro trend and to bet on that. I was in Bay Area in late 90s when internet was taking off. In 2000, market crashed, people gave up on internet, but internet was this profound long-term change. The companies that stayed with it eventually, they're worth trillions of dollars now. When I moved back to India in 2007-8, it was early days of internet in the country, but it enabled businesses like Flipkart, Mintra, later on Swiggy, Ola, and so on. In 2011-12, we saw the shift from internet from desktop to mobile. Again, Mintra was one of the earlier companies in India to kind of totally embrace that wave, to the extent that in 2015, we went mobile only, which was a bad idea, but it built the mobile first DNA for the company. And I think from everything I've seen, AI is a much, much bigger macro trend. So right now, as a founder, my message to myself is let's just stay in the game for next 10 years. Let's learn about AI. I think Pratyush, I'm sure, will talk about that. Whatever we are seeing about LLM is going to change dramatically over next 1-2 years. New architecture will emerge. DeepSeek, caught everyone's attention, and I'm sure this is not going to be last such a development in the space. So I think for founders, my input will be get your hands dirty. I've actually, after 20 years, I kind of relearned Python programming, and so that I can call the LLM APIs directly and understand what they can do, what they can't do. So it's not a mystery. It's not something I'm only reading in headline, but have a hands-on feel. So I'd encourage people who are interested in building anything. I'm pretty sure there is a very, very strong AI angle to it. And just, learn as much as you can and just stay with this wave for a while. It will go up and down. 2 years from now, people may be saying, okay, there's maybe some AI crash coming, but all that is part and parcel of how these big technology trends play out.
Amazing. Mukesh Bansal is learning how to code in Python. I don't think anybody has to wait to now build AI. Pratish, you and Vivek have even a more fascinating story. I think if we would have met 3 or 4 years back, I don't think you would have been thinking I'm going to be building a company. Walk us through a little bit of your journey and how Sarvam happened.
Yes, so very much a traditional research career path. So studied very close by here at IIT Bombay, went ahead for a PhD, joined big tech research, was at IBM Research, was at Microsoft Research. Then caught the bug of teaching, right, which was an interesting twist in the career. So joined IIT Madras, started teaching computer science. This was the time when deep learning, some of you might relate to that time, when deep learning was taking off. And by the way, that was a fundamental shift in AI. AI was very algorithmic driven in its thinking. It looked like if you wanted to do speech AI, you need to do particular kind of algorithms. Vision AI is a different kind of algorithms. But deep learning sort of moved it to a unified direction and became very systems heavy. Bada models, bada data chahiye, and then things work, right? A little bit was surprising to some people, but the trend was starting to show up, right? So I focused a lot on deep learning. In fact, taught a course on deep learning online. About 60,000 kids did the course. Was a great experience. That time I realized that people can build. And if you were to build together, you can actually build and build good things. So we started AI for Bharat, which was effort within IIT Madras. It was a research lab. And the problem statement was, can we go build AI for India in open source, right? And the initial thing failed. The initial thing that we tried to do was to make it a crowdsourced build out. Define problems and find crowdsourced solutions. It didn't work because there was no locus of agency and things like that, right? So we pivoted and we said, let's build internally. Let's create a small team. We had an AI for Bharat Fellows program, got folks from all over the country. And then we said, let's focus on languages, Indian languages, and let's build something. Very quickly, in a matter of 6-7 months, a couple of good students together, we built out models for translation. So English to Indian languages and vice versa. And we were able to improve on what is models from Google and Microsoft, which of course took a lot more money to build. And that was a surprising thing. It was surprising to us as well. And people took notice. Nandan Nilekani actually funded us. One of the first efforts within academia to raise over $10 million. And we scaled up AI for Bharat. Today, it's a 200-person organization that continues to push on open source Indian language AI, right? So that was fascinating, and I continue to be involved. Professor Mitesh Khapra is running it, and with lots of open source contributions to India AI as well, right? But then I had a feeling that, as exactly what Mukesh said, this is too big a change, what happened with generative AI, which is like deep learning taken to an extreme. And I just had to be all in. And Vivek, who is sort of like a entrepreneur turned government entrepreneur in some sense, worked at Aadhaar, built it for 15 years. So he and I came together. And we said, let's build a company grounds up to build generative AI. We called it Sarvam because we believe that this technology should touch everybody. I think India does well in technology when it is at a consumer scale, and that is what we wanted to build. And the main metric that we were targeting was what fraction of the technologies needed to build a foundation model do we know in-house, right? And we have been tracking that and taking it up, and I'm happy to say that now we have most of the components to build large foundation models. We are building them as well. So that is the main intent of how Sarvam started.
Amazing, great journey, and I would encourage everybody to learn a little bit more about AI for Bharat. I fondly call it the first true research lab before OpenAI happened. And there was it's laid the groundwork for a lot of the work that obviously Sarvam is doing, but many AI companies in India are now doing. So great segue, foundation models. So let's talk about that. We'll come to DeepSeek, but more than DeepSeek, Pratyush, somebody told me this in a very interesting way. I was talking to yesterday who said, I'm part of this team, one of the large labs. We released the model, and it was the best model in the world for 1 week. The last 2 weeks has been incredible. What was it? It was Grok 3, um, then Cloud 3.7, and then there's GPT 4.5. So just it, it's hard to keep up. And then today morning, while I was on my way over here, I saw this tweet finally, which I feel every day of my life, which is when I wake up in the morning, sometimes I get a headache keeping up with what just happened overnight in Silicon Valley, right? You're just catching up. Um, Given all of that, and of course, I'll reserve our view of what we are trying to do at India AI, but given all of that, as a commercial entity, fundamentally, looking to build a large company which is groundbreaking from India, how do you think about Sarvam and where you will go with the models, what you will build, and eventually, where does the money come?
Right. So firstly, we are in extremely interesting times, right? So all of many builders here, I would ask you not to underestimate what is happening in generative AI, why it's happening so fast, why it's getting so much money, why sometimes things are getting deflated when people release in open source. There's a lot happening. I don't think previous generations of technology have moved so fast, week by week, month by month, as what is happening.
100%.
Right? I think that is something we cannot underestimate. So I think all of us have to double down, right?
I mean, Mukesh, I mean, you've seen many of these technology waves. Nothing is moving as fast as this.
No, absolutely. This is absolutely insane. I think it's probably at least 5-6 times faster than anything we might have seen in the past.
Yeah, so the consequence then is the following, right? I think there is a motion across the world to build larger and larger, more capable models. There were various what are called scaling laws which were looked at. There were data scaling laws, ki jada data dalo to model is better, right? Now there are other kinds of scaling laws. For example, you might just hear, it's a bit technical term, but reinforcement learning, which is an algorithm which is computationally expensive. But if you train more with it, the models keep getting better and better, right? And then the final thing is what is called inference time scale out, which is as the model is running, if you think more, generate more tokens, self-reflect, it gets better and better. What all this means is nobody is able to see a wall of when this will all stop. There are multiple levers you are still able to crank, and it's
And then the synthetic data.
synthetic data is part of all of this, which is training these models, right? So the levers are still open, and you're able to crank and get more out of it, so people are investing more. So that is one point, right? That's why the area is flourishing and will continue to flourish. People are estimating various asymptotic points like AGI in 2 years, etc. That's subject to debate, but I think it is moving very fast. For a company like Sarvam, the basic point is this. We should have builders who can build this technology ground up in India, right? It is so important to technology, whether it was nuclear technology earlier, whether it was space research earlier, or with semiconductors earlier. Of course, people will move fast across the world. You need companies who are capable of doing the whole hog in India. That's our first primary goal. So being science-driven is important, right? The second thing is that because it is so important a technology, we will need in certain aspects of the technology sovereignty, right? In certain things that we do in the country, we would need that these models have a certain perimeter of governance which is well managed, right? So we see a great value in being able to do that. The third thing is building for Indian consumers and Indian businesses, right? We continue to push the bar in terms of how these models perform in Indian languages, right? So whether it is how somebody, so if you look at ChatGPT, you could of course interact in various languages, but if you try building a voice bot end to end in one of the Indian languages, we have a stack in Sarvam, which is actually more accurate, more efficient, and able to perform across 11, 12 languages, covering 88% of speaking population better. So the focus on Indian consumer, what we would need to do in India, and solve these problems also becomes important. So these are the three things we are looking at. Be science-driven. This is so early in the evolution of a scientific area which is going to continue for decades, right? The second thing is sovereignty, and India AI is playing a major role there. And the third is the empathy and building for not directly the consumers, but at least companies that build for consumers in India, solving their problems very well and ensuring that, this is the final bite, right? The per capita Gen AI consumption of India needs to increase, because so important a technology, we can feel excited as builders, but eventually people using it in the country, access to intelligence matters, and that is the mission for which we are very focused in building out.
Great way to put it. Per capita Gen AI consumption of the country. I'm going to take that away as a metric. Mukesh, I'm going to ask you like a question, but it's a long-winded one because this is something we discussed when we spoke a few weeks back. Why are there not more servams in India? And then if we ask a second, if we go down, we say, oh, capital, but there is a lot of capital, right? There's obviously a lot of capital. Even, let's say, as entrepreneurs, you and I, or particularly you chose to go more on the agent orchestration side. I know you then thought, okay, should I go build model? Give us some perspective on that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very pertinent question, and I think a lot of people in India today are scratching their head and asking exactly same question. I think I'll probably, as I have understood this, first and foremost, I think I want to commend Pratyush for what he is doing, because I think it's super important for India to have a game plan and be a meaningful participant. While our per capita inference consumption may increase, but if all of it is powered by foreign foundational models, we'll be paying rent for each of those inference queries, and which will add up very quickly, because I don't think 5 years from now there's going to be any application, any use case which will not be using LLMs. This is basically automated intelligence, and the utility of that is incredible. It's the first time where we have intelligence in a box which can be used in a variety of use cases. So I think India needs to have a game plan. I think we are a little bit caught off guard. See, India, our entrepreneurial ecosystem has done amazingly well over the last 20 years, but almost all of that has happened is applied stuff. It's operational efficiency. Sometimes we use the term jugaad, which has its own value, has created, a lot of convenience for consumers, but it is not creation of original technology. And that is, I think, what we as a country are facing, that who are we going to be next 1 or 2 decades? If you look at China also started there, if you go back 3 decades ago, China has all these copycat cheap products. That was the narrative. But that has completely changed in the last 2 decades. They are at the forefront of AI, quantum technologies, EVs, you name it. So I think we are facing that moment in the country's history, that who are we going to be? Are we going to really reinvent ourselves as a deep tech nation, which requires deep tech research ecosystem? So that's where Indian academia also needs to really think. We have great researchers, academic institute, they publish good papers. We contribute, I think, something like 3-4% of all the research papers. But the translation of that into practical applications is almost nothing. So that is one structural roadblock that we need to fix. When we talk about deep tech, if you look at just 2 examples, OpenAI was started as a non-profit in 2015. They had no revenue for 7 years. DeepMind was started, I think, 2010. Again, with this ambitious goal of solving intelligence, but they were able to raise money. So I think for us, our venture ecosystem is set up to be able to go to market in 6 months, 12 months. Some kind of product market fit in 2 years, 3 years max. But those time frames are also not sufficient to do deep tech stuff. You need 3 to 5 year gestation period for building deep tech. So I think these are the things, our ecosystem need to learn, invent, because the cost of not doing that is, I think Pratyush touched upon the whole strategic autonomy, is going to be super important. I think there are efforts here and there. There's a lot that entrepreneurs need to do, researchers need to do, large industrial houses in India who have big capital deployment capability. And of course, government initiative. I know there are initiatives including Akrit one, the one you are involved in, and some more on the way. So it will be, I think, next 2, 3, 4 years, I hope, we create different type of ecosystem, because, cost of not doing that is going to be, pretty disastrous for the country.
Yeah, I think really, really well put. Look, let's come to the one topic that I think this panel, everybody's been waiting for this panel to discuss, DeepSeek, because you mentioned China. Pratish, we'll start with you maybe. DeepSeek was a lot of hoo-ha, oh my God, what happened and this and that. Demystify for the audience what you think actually happened and what actually changed and what did not.
Yeah, so I really liked one thing that Mukesh said, which is we need to decide as a country who we want to be. I think that's very well put, and I think that at least captures my own emotions very clearly. What happened in DeepSeek, from a technical perspective, is it was actually outstanding, right? And in fact, what is becoming clearer about that, and I kept saying this, people said they are copycats, but they are now open sourcing for the last 5 days different components that they use to build the model, which are actually world class. So what happened is the following. China invested in talent very early, right? This is not now. They're talking about the last 10, 15, 20 years. They got back professors who were in the US. They got back people working in the deep tech companies.
1997.
97 even.
28 years back they started.
They started this process, right? And institutionalized it. And institutions make it very easy for compositional innovation, right? They had a lot of talent in-house for the last 10 years who understood how to work with NVIDIA GPUs, which is what is the bedrock currently, might change, but the bedrock of training and inferencing. They understood these GPUs better than even the NVIDIA engineers, right? In fact, they wrote code for these GPUs which were at a layer below what is called the CUDA programming layer. It's actually at the assembly code level, right? And that does not come quickly. It takes a decade to build talent at that level and do it. In fact, I taught a course on GPU programming at IIT Madras, and we were very abstract. We were still almost working at CUDA programming level, not even going into assembly, and they were actually innovating at that layer. So I think this is the first important point.
So, great point. So these engineers who did this, are these are not AI researchers? Are these software engineers? Are they back-end engineers? I mean, I think we have a lot of students here.
Yeah, so this is a good question. To build a foundation model today, you need, of course, AI researchers who understand this space, but you need a lot of system hackers who can build systems, who can understand things at low level, whether it is GPUs, networking, data, file system. In fact, they built new file systems to build these models, right? So I think the deep understanding of foundational layers of computing is important, right? And that's an important learning for us in the academia also, because we have become a little abstract in the way we do things. As you said, even in the startup world, we've been looking at operational efficiency and so on. I think the value is deeper in the stack, and they built that expertise. That is one aspect of it. The other aspect, of course, is that they had the ambition and saying that let us build large and large models. They, of course, bought the compute. They made similar bets in terms of infrastructure very early, tens of thousands of GPUs, and they built probably one of the largest models trained, right? And they, of course, they did it after the fact. There were outstanding models from OpenAI, from Gemini, from Anthropic, which might have helped them build this model. That is just a speculation that people have. So it was after the fact, but what was very interesting is they open sourced it, and they're continuing to open source it, right? So China clearly is doing two things. One, building deep tech expertise with high...
What about the economics? Because it clearly wasn't 6 million.
No, it was not 6 million. That was a bit of a psychops, I would say, right? So I think they just said, hey, itna sasta hai. What are you guys doing with thousands of times of that money? It requires more. There are 100 authors in that paper, right? So, and they were there around for several years, right? But having said that, I think it's still deflated the value of foundation model building.
What do you think, because this is one of the questions that even I think about a lot, what do you think was the true order of magnitude of this deflation? It wasn't 100x, obviously, but what was it?
So there are two things that are happening, right? There is building the best model today, and then building the model which can compete close to the best models. And I think the challenges are very different, because if you're trying to build the best model, you are pushing the model without anything to pull on to, right? And there is a lot of different techniques that are used for that. I would say it is in the ballpark of that $50 million to build a model that is competitive to foundation models, and it will continue to improve over the years, right?
Mukesh, your take on DeepSeek a little bit, and then also, given of course with Nurex and others, help us dive a little bit into use cases. And where I'm coming from that is, you know, I often get this from startups, government, everybody here and there, that everybody says AI everywhere, but you know, where is it? Like in my hands, I'm still limited to mostly things like ChatGPT. So a little bit on DeepSeek and then the use cases.
Yeah, I think as a AI stakeholder, I think overall DeepSeek is great for overall catalyzing the AI ecosystem. I think Silicon Valley, you know, took notice. I think there were war rooms set up in all the big foundational model companies, And they are like just how DeepSeek learned a lot from what was happening there. All these guys also dramatically accelerated their learning from DeepSeek way of doing things, and all of that is now flowing it. The speed at which they are doing work, I'm sure by now they've all analyzed the DeepSeek paper in the excruciating level of detail and borrowing techniques from that. So in terms of acceleration of AI, I think it's great. Whenever a disruptor comes and shows a whatever a 5x better way or 10x better way, then everyone else is going to copy. I think US companies have a lot of structural long-term advantages, whether it's data, access to GPUs. Um, Chinese companies have a lot of handicaps also. They are in some ways very cloistered environment. So I think we will see a dramatic acceleration of
some said that DeepSeek was because of that constraint breeds creativity. Because they had all these handicaps. They took on themselves. If we'll figure this out.
Right, but where do you go from there? And how many times can you replicate that? Because what's happening across all these companies. People are also not pursuing just one approach. There are many different competing approaches. If you follow Jan LeCun, for example, right? He's very strong proponent of that next generation of architecture are inevitable. AI is not going to go very far with just scaling laws of the current LLMs. So I think this acceleration of innovation as a DeepSeek moment, I think is great for AI community. We are seeing, I think AI is slowly making its way into a lot of things. If you use any consumer application, there is some component of GenAI is already coming, whether if you use products from Meta or Google or Microsoft and so on. A lot of all large enterprise software companies by now, they have incorporated a lot of GenAI in their suite, whether it's, again, Salesforce or other companies. Voice is one area where we are, I think this year, seeing a lot of things go into production. I'm aware of, at this point, hundreds of companies where you call into their call center, the person at the other end is not a person, but an AI which is, picks up the phone, has a conversation with you, and able to resolve a lot of queries. A lot of companies in India have either most of the chat interactions automated, and voice is starting to happen. So I think this year we'll see, at least on this customer interaction use cases, a lot of AI adoption. Back office automation, other area where a lot of work is happening, and I think we should see some of those use cases also start to go into production in a big way in this year, next year.
Show of hands, how many over here have on the phone spoken to an AI voice bot? Yeah, that's 50%. So that's fair degree of penetration.
Next year we can ask how many of you prefer talking to your AI versus talking to your friend.
Yeah. Great segue, Mukesh, because I want to talk really deep down a little bit, and I know Sarvam, this is a part of their core thesis, is this entire voice medium. And this, we used to think of this as haptic, and even as part of Geo, one of the big theses that we've always had is that India will be this voice-first country, and as a result, we'll voice AI will be the primary mode for our country over here. So just double dip a little bit on that. That besides maybe call center, customer interaction, what types of other use cases do you see emerging within voice, particularly when you think about India?
I think first of all, voice is super interesting. If you look at as a humans, we primarily communicate through either body language or voice. Reading and writing, other than very small fraction of people didn't exist, 500 years ago. It's, with the advent of printing press is only, people started to learn how to read and write. Typewriters didn't exist, I think, 100, 120 years ago. So all these modalities of, typing something, writing and so on is very, very new. But just voice interaction is so much natural to us. If you look at even the office, pretty much all the work happens in meeting rooms. We don't understand exactly what happens there, but all of us still, like to be in the meeting room talking to each other, and somehow things happen. So I think with AI being able to understand and have a very natural interface to interact, I think has a profound implication of how things change. We as a country, I think we have, so many dialects, so many languages, and a lot of people, if you go to beyond, top 100, 200 million people, not necessarily very conversant typing things, reading, esoteric, or reading, English or even Hindi, but they are very well versed in their native language. They can talk to anyone. They can express complex ideas, complex emotions. They will need to interact with the government for a variety of services. So AI can, short circuit that access barrier that people had because certain level of education or familiarity with particular language. I think we can bypass all those barriers. So I think a lot of benefits that either government is making available or acceleration of learning, acceleration of healthcare services, I think can dramatically accelerate. And I think we will see a lot of that happen. I think Pratyush touched upon the population scale adoption. These are the use cases where I think we as a country can benefit immensely from very accelerated adoption of what AI can do for us.
Pratyush, you guys are already implementing some of this stuff in the field. Talk a little bit about the voice first use cases. What are the things that you're seeing out of the gate at the moment?
So what I'm very interested is you asked here how many people have used voice bots, and 50% people raised their hands, right? What's to me very inspiring is India 2 and India 3, and how many people will raise their hands when we ask this question and in the country level, right? Because as Mukesh said, 90s, late 90s onwards, we have solved the problem through internet of access to information, entertainment, news, etc., right? I think this is the era of access to intelligence, right? And the job that we have, I mean, we take it very responsibly, is that Har Bharatiya Ko, you should get access to intelligence, right? And intelligence could be, like he said, healthcare, education. These are things where, as a country, our infrastructure is not up to the mark, right? We are talking a lot about Bangalore roads in the room, right? UPI works much better than our roads, right? And we as a country have
I
understood
think
how
yesterday there was a session with some of the policymakers here, and somebody in that panel asked the question, we keep talking about AI this, will AI fix our roads?
no, inside the company we have a joke that unless AI fixes roads, it is not AGI, right? So in Bangalore roads in particular, right? But that's the point, right? We have, as a country, understood through some champions. You have also been part of the earlier generation of work that has happened. I think we have understood how to build technology and make it impactful across scale, right? Population scale. This is our opportunity to do that for intelligence. And it has and this is, I think, the dual to what we have been speaking till now, which is frontier labs are pushing AI, DeepSeek is happening, China is happening. India's foundational role, and I here go back to what Vikram Sarabhai said, he was running our space program. He said India should be second to none in ensuring the benefit of technology for the common person, right? And that opportunity is huge. We are a big country, young country, not great infrastructure, a lot of demand for jobs, employment, education. This is really our time to take this technology. Doesn't matter which model, doesn't matter where it is running. I think we need to provide intelligence per capita to the citizens, right? So here, Akrit, I would like to a little bit ask you as one, I mean, since we have 2 minutes on the clock, it was great to see someone like you who build successful companies, then go and work with the government, do things like India AI. Do you want to give some flavor of what's happening there? What is your mission? What are you thinking about?
No, sure. Yeah, I mean, I have a habit of making odd career choices and decisions, and this was, I think, one of them. As I was transitioning out of haptic, why this conversation is so close to my heart is I kept thinking about last summer, what does population scale AI mean? And how do you build AI that touches hundreds of millions and potentially billion people over the next few years in India? I moved back from the US in 2013 to build AI for India at that time, which was, again, bad timing, right? And we did well. Haptic had a great outcome. But really, this kept bothering me that now is the time. And while I was thinking about it, while there was no obvious answers coming, I mean, you guys were already up and running, I ran into India AI mission in terms of what they were doing as a mission. And Mukesh mentioned about OpenAI, and I kept feeling that maybe the way to build population scale AI might be slightly non-conventional, not necessarily getting into entrepreneurship and building a company. Just like OpenAI started as a non-profit, that's kind of what I started thinking that, look, could India AI mission become that, right, within the government entity? I always say, can it create the kind of impact from policy or government that something between, let's say, an NPCI did or an ISRO did? You alluded to the space program. And that's sort of what drew me to this, and I've been there for about 6 months now, but feels a few years in AI land and everything that we've accomplished. And currently, the biggest project that we're working on is a call for proposals of foundation models, where after a lot of debate and back and forth between various people and influencers in India, including policymakers, we have now released a call where anybody who wants to build foundation models for India that are India-centric The government of India will support you with grants, compute capacity, compute credits, and whatever it takes to actually build state-of-the-art, world-class models from India for the world. So that's when I'm spending time. Um, I know we're out of time, but I really have to ask you guys this one question. Um, Lots of people in the audience, early stage startups, entrepreneurs, potentially repeat entrepreneurs on the edge, students, or the fabric of our country, right? Is reflected over here. Everybody has so much excitement around AI. Everybody wants to do an AI, but the most common question is, what do I do? Where do I start?
I think this answer is probably independent of AI. Find an interesting problem. I think, as a country, we have tons and tons of problem. It doesn't matter, from infrastructure to health to education and so on. Find a problem which is not solved, and typically, problem that is still not solved is for a reason. I'll just have an example of, quick commerce. Quick commerce probably could not have happened 10 years ago. Why? Because we did not have density at the time. Quick commerce requires a density, which e-commerce built over a period of time. At some point, it became the critical mass was there, so quick commerce can happen. But some problems are still not solved. So look around you. Typically, we'll encounter those problems in our everyday life. Education is a great example. I think we had start of a very strong edtech ecosystem. There were a lot of mistakes that were being made in 2021-22. As a result, it's like wide open, but number of kids is not slowing down, not going to slow down for a while. So even more people who are aspiring for better education, and AI is going to again cut down the access barrier dramatically for people. So there are a lot of opportunities there. There are tons of opportunities in health, pretty much any service sector, anything which requires intelligence. So I would say, just find an interesting problem and say, how can I leverage AI to do it better? I think, hundreds and thousands of companies probably to build in India for India.
So I feel the biggest risk right now is being not ambitious, because today, I mean, this is I think a fairly empowered group. Again, really like the vibe in this place. I think all of us should think much bigger, because the leverage that AI provides in solving problems, in becoming better as individuals, in working better as teams, and putting things out there is enormous. And I think the only risk I think we have is not being ambitious enough and really solving big things.
I'll just add one more pattern. You think of any expert, whether it's a doctor or a tutor or a fashion stylist or a accountant or a lawyer, like anything, because what does expert
Or
mean?
a McKinsey consultant.
McKinsey consultant, especially McKinsey consultant, because they are so damn expensive. The, the these human experts have acquired the expertise over a long career, slowly accumulating knowledge, patterns, so on. But most AI models already have that and way more. And you can use multiple models also. These models are evolving. So I think anywhere we have expert provides expensive service, it's like ripe for disruption. I think a lot of innovation will happen in that area.
Great way to sum it up. Biggest risk is to not be ambitious enough, but the principles of building something remain the same. Find a problem, fall in love with it. Thank you, guys. This was fun.